about in a moment. I will just start with this one quote, though, from G.K. Chesterton. What we should try to do is make politics as local as possible. Keep the politicians near enough to kick them. The villagers who met under the village tree could also hang their politicians to the tree. It is terrible to contemplate how few politicians are hanged. Quite like that. Right, so this is on the back of the segment that Brian delivered last week on Monday about the dissolution, the fait accompli, essentially, which has been handed to residents of South Hams in Devon, with local councils being dissolved, and the whole county ultimately apparently is going to be integrated into one single authority under Plymouth Council without really much discussion about this at all. And we've been inundated with examples over the past few days of this happening elsewhere around the country, from the Highlands of Scotland right the way back down to the south coast of England. I'm going to focus on East Sussex today. Thanks to Chloe for sending this over, and I'll draw your attention to this article, which is "Who Will Govern Your Council? Time to Have Your Say." Right, and importantly, I think that the operative term is in the opening paragraph there. It says that there'll be one council. The government wants to reorganise local government so that everyone in East Sussex gets their services from just one council. It could mean, apparently. So this means that county, district and borough councils are going to be replaced. There'll be a single authority for about 500,000 people, potentially, right? And they're saying that this could happen, but as the article goes on to say, a letter to the government from Wealdon District Council suggests the smaller councils have been given little choice but to support their own abolition, given the time constraints and government criteria limits. And so this apparently is just happening. It doesn't sound like any of the gunning principles have been adhered to, very importantly and unsurprisingly. So what is this all about? Well, obviously it's presented as a good thing. It's all about streamlining local government, delivering efficiencies, improving outcomes. Love those outcomes for residents and communities, making best use of resources, all very non-specific, isn't it, now and for the future. Importantly, enhancing local democracy, local identity, transparency, accessibility, local decision-making and accountability, which seems ludicrous given that you are trying to reduce the number of councils, right? It's going to deliver the exact opposite of this, isn't it? What else? Supporting and driving decision-making and public service reform at both Sussex and local level. Public service reform, I'll come back to that in a minute because I think that gives us a clue as to where this is coming from. And then finally, providing a stronger and unified voice to help attract investment and tackle priorities, which I think probably gives the game away, right? This is ultimately about money, so attracting inward investment, international capital to buy land, buildings, whatever it might be, from one authority that controls the whole of the county. It makes it easier for that money to come in and take the things they want to take, but then also to tackle priorities, unspecified priorities. Essentially, this is the government missions, right? So it says, though, on the right-hand side, it's not a done deal. There is a consultation running. It's open to East Sussex residents until next Monday, June the 23rd. So if you're in Eastbourne, under East Sussex Council, Hastings, Lewes, Rother or Wealdon District Council, then you are able to reply to this. The link is on screen. It'll also be in the show notes. And it sounds like the precedent set in Dulwich could actually be quite compelling. So I think that they need to be told about that by as many people as possible, right? And maybe we can have another victory on our hands here. So back to public spending reform, public service reform, and a little look into where this is coming from. And ultimately, it's coming from the centre. Yeah. So if we go to look at the spending review, which was announced last week by Rachel Reeves in Parliament on Wednesday, I think it was, we'll go straight to the section on public service reform 3.3. Yeah, the government's approach to public sector reform is guided by three principles: to integrate services so that they are organised around people's lives. This is the state organising itself around your life, and don't think that that's being done in a positive way. Yeah, this is about micromanaging you ultimately. Yeah, so they want to improve long-term outcomes for people through a focus on prevention. So that means the state intervening in your business in order to stop you doing things it doesn't like you doing, and then apparently, and this is about devolving power to local areas that understand the needs of their communities best, with services that are designed with and for people. And I don't buy this for a second. This is about power getting closer to people, not people getting closer to power, as we spoke about last week. But importantly, this is being done in partnership with civil society and the impact economy, right? So this is charitable foundations, philanthropic wealth, i.e. rich people with an agenda trying to re-engineer the country in a way that meets their ends ultimately, right? And this is embedded into government policy. This is driving the spending review, right? They continue. I'd highly recommend going to read this, particularly section 3, because all this is being done under the narrative of improving the NHS, by the way. They've kind of tucked this away in the bottom of the NHS section. If you go to 3.31, we can also see that in reforming local government, the government will take action to return local government to a sustainable financial position, including by providing an additional 3.4 billion of grant funding per year by 28-29. So central government is propping up local government, which is broke. Yeah, so the tax base has collapsed out in the regions. So central government is going to pump 3.4 billion pounds of money in to keep these structures propped up. And obviously, as a consequence of that, is going to be exerting control over what happens in those localities. We can also see that wider reforms, unspecified, will ensure funding is effectively targeted based on an updated assessment of need and will consolidate funding to give local authorities greater flexibility to innovate. That word is very important, to innovate, to transform themselves, to move from one system to a new system, right, ultimately. And these consultations that are popping up all around the country are about this. Yeah, it's the transformation of central government. Where else is it coming from? We talked about Rachel Reeves and the spending review. Well, crucially, it's coming from Cabinet Office. Georgia Gould, MP, Cabinet Office Minister, speaking to Demos earlier on this year, saying when the rules at the centre are blocking services, i.e. stopping me from doing what I want to do, Georgia Gould, then we need to change those rules. Yeah, they're completely re-engineering the state. She was in The Guardian also, Georgia Gould, on Saturday, talking about the fact that the civil service is too remote from people's lives across the UK, apparently. The civil service needs to be in people's lives. That's what she's saying. A few quotes from the article. She says that her job was to help close the big gap between those doing the frontline operational roles and those who are making policies. Whitehall working would be turned inside out, is the term that she's used, as the Cabinet Office has announced that Starmer's health mission is going to be based in Leeds. So a lot of NHS people moving to Leeds, its opportunity mission moving to Sheffield, its growth mission to Darlington, and civil servants are going to be working with local government and frontline workers to pioneer new approaches. So again, this is the transformation of service delivery around the government's missions. And the Cabinet Office has also announced, it was back in May, that they're going to be shutting down Whitehall buildings and moving civil servants. So about 12,000 civil servant roles are going to be moving out of Whitehall into the regions. And they're actually trying to get to a point where 50% of all senior civil servant roles are going to be based outside of London in the next 5 years. And apparently that's about policy being made closer to the communities that are affected. But actually, this isn't about the devolution of power. It's about turning the whole country into Whitehall, essentially. Yeah, that's what I can see happening here. And putting Georgia Gould and the Cabinet Office in the driving seat, right? So what's a little bit more about her background? She's a fascinating and important character. She learnt her political trade, certainly professionally, as Mayor of Camden Council, and the central London councils are a test bed for a lot of the policies that are currently being introduced. And importantly, she's a Labour Party insider. She's the daughter of Lord Gould, Blair's favourite pollster. Lord Gould was then a partner at Freud Communications, who run communications, PR for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this links directly back to the Brookings Institution that we were talking about a few minutes ago. And importantly, this popped up, which I think is quite interesting in telling about the connections between Gould and the other component parts of the Labour establishment. So this is from 2003 in the Camden New Journal. You can see Georgia Gould there in the background on the right-hand side. She's also, interestingly, there with a young woman called Alex Birtles, who is the daughter of Patricia Hewitt, who was Health Secretary under Blair from 2005 to 2007. And in the 1970s, Hewitt was General Secretary of the National Council for Civil Liberties when it was affiliated with the Paedophile Information Exchange for 8 years, from 1975 to 1983. And in the centre there, we can see that's Margaret Hodge, who at the time this was taken was the Education Minister under Tony Blair, a position Hodge was supremely well placed for, given that she arrived into office with a reputation for ignoring horrific cases of child abuse in care homes that she was responsible for while she was the leader of Islington Council. Who better to mentor a new generation of Labour politicians coming to office, and who better to oversee the transformation of local government? And Sandy, I think you've got something coming up about Islington Council as well.
From Islington